Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Willey. I'm a early career scientist representative with the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our next exciting session. We will be discussing connecting science to communities, informing adaptation in the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, and Pamir regions, hosted by the AKAH Agency for Habitat. I'd like to now introduce the moderator for today's session. We have Rosa Laura, coordinator of the Mountain Partnership Secretariats. Rosa Laura, it's yours.
Thank you. So thank you very much and welcome to this event. And let me start saying Happy International Mountain Day to all of us. Yes, I'm Rosa Laura Romeo, and I am the coordinator of the Mountain Partnership Secretariat. The Mountain Partnership is the only United Nations alliance devoted to mountain people, mountain environments, and we are very happy to coordinate the activities related to the International Mountain Day. Our global alliance counts now more than 500 members, among which 66 governments and hundreds of very active and engaged major group organizations. And the AKAH Agency for Habitat is one of our very active members. So this year, the theme of the International Mountain Day is restoring mountain ecosystem. And I'm sure all of you all of us working on mountains understand very well why this theme is so relevant. Mountain ecosystems are often very degraded. And if they have to continue fulfilling their important role, it's very important to restore these key ecosystems. Of course, the International Mountain Day is also an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of calling for a nature-based solution and best practices that can support and build the resilience of mountain people against the vulnerability that is so high in mountain areas. We all know that climate change is accelerating in mountain region, and this is especially true for the communities across the Hindu-Kush, Himalaya, and Pamir region. They are witnessing very severe climate change impacts on their life and their livelihood, with very important consequences. So we know that the increased intensity, frequency of climate events have overwhelmed the traditional coping mechanism. And indeed, science-informed innovation is needed to support adaptation and ensure that these communities can continue to live in their mountains, and mountains can continue to provide their very important ecosystem services. Of course, we know that a key challenge is how we integrate scientific knowledge into actionable initiatives on the ground. And these require a very joint effort, a strong collaboration among policymakers, the scientific communities, academia, planners, and practitioners. So I think this is the objective of our meeting today, is to hear from the AKAH Agency for Habitat about the very unique pilot studies that they are conducting that would bridge the gap between scientific knowledge and action. I would not go into the details of these studies. I'm sure we will hear a lot about that. But I would like to say that as Mountain Partnership Secretariat, we are very interested in supporting these initiatives. And I would like to thank the AKAH for inviting me to moderate this event. So now I would like to give the floor to the first speaker. In fact, there are two first speakers. Mr. Deoraj Gurung is the chief scientist of the AKAH Agency for Habitat, and he's the leader of this very important special initiative. And this working together, I understand, with Eftimios Nikolopoulos, who is an associate professor at the Rutger University, and I think they will share this presentation. So, Deo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Good morning to colleagues and also friends. I've been fortunate indeed to lead this very modest but very, very important initiative within AKAH Agency for Habitat. Every outing that I take, every conferences that I attend, every person that I talk to, both scientific and also scientific fraternity, and also from the development and practitioners, as well as communities. The need for such studies connecting science with the communities is becoming even more convincing and compelling. And I'm happy that I have been able to lead this initiative within AKAH Agency for Habitat. Today, as a part of this session, I wanted to share, set the context right for deliberating and debating on what it takes for us to bridge this gap between science and the communities. So with few slides, I'd like to set the context. If I can. As I said, I'll spend some time talking about why, what is that we are doing, and how we are doing. Basically, to share some of the learnings of the sessions that I had with different stakeholders so far, and also how we could improve on bridging the gap. Let me take a few minutes to introduce my agency. We are part of a larger network called AKAH Development Network, and our agency, the AKAH Agency for Habitat, or in short, AKAH, our goal is to ensure that our communities live safely, securely, and also thrive. And we deliver our program through these three strategic pillars. One, the plan, which engages understanding of the existing risk and also potential risk. Second is to prepare against the risk and then use this knowledge and the interventions to progress. Talking about our operational footprints, we identify ourselves as a community-driven organizations, really using data and science to help us plan and manage our programs on the ground, inform our programs on the ground. We have done several community level risk assessments. We have done lots of hazard assessments, looked into how we can inform and prepare our communities to prepare against the impending disasters, looking into ensuring that communities have amenities to thrive, not just survive, like water sanitation programs and so on. And we also look into habitat planning, ensuring that our future habitats that we build are safe, secure, and also have a conducive environment to thrive. In terms of geographical presence, we currently work in 5 countries actively: India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Syria. We do have a presence in Kyrgyzstan as well. Coming to this very topic of this very session, connecting science to the communities. I think, as I said, every conference that we attend, you will hear lots of presentation on the science side, as well as the need at the communities, what we need to do on the communities. But you will hardly hear, or you'll possibly hear few presentations on how do we ensure that the science connects to the community, or a presentation on cases where we clearly see how science are connected with the communities. In order to bridge this gap, we started our engagement with the broader stakeholders, and we position ourselves as an enabling agency or enabler, trying to create that enabling environment sitting in between science and the community, speaking to the science as well as the community. And AKAH, in that sense, has a unique privilege because of the fact that we have been working very closely at the community level, and also having the scientific acumen to bring these two sides together, science and the community together. AKAH sits uniquely positioned to lead this process. We see there are 3 big elements to have these connections built, science with the communities. The first one is that we need to spend lots of effort creating that science, the knowledge base for being able to then transfer or shift to inform the community-based programming. So with this effort as per our program, we have been able to connect with the scientific community, including academia across the globe, and develop do a very comprehensive compilation of research and scientific research that done by the community, scientific community across the globe. Second thing that we would do then is to connect science and the scientific fraternity people with the community developers, practitioners on the ground, understanding their needs and ensuring that how we could package and deliver the science into the hands of community leaders, community development partners to inform their community level preparedness and programs. As part of our effort to do the science part, we have been able to work with the scientific community and compile a report on looking at how climate change, and the impacts will look like in midterm till 2050, short-term 2050, midterm 2080, and by end of the century on the two climate impact scenarios, RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5. We have taken 21 districts spread across Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan as our pilot area, trying to do this detailed compilation of scientific knowledge, working with the scientific fraternity, and done coordination with the researchers across the world, particularly looking at bringing on board about 10 or 8 researchers across the globe. Our technical partner here being Rutgers University, who have been helping us to work across the academic community. We have brought in some of the prominent universities across the globe, some of whom are also implementing NASA-funded High Mountain Area project, where they also look into what would climate entails in terms of ground realities in projecting and modeling how the future will look like in climate as well as the impact. So Rutgers is helping us with communicating and then compiling the information. The reason that we have been working with the academia is to ensure that the quality and veracity of the information that we gather is being looked properly with the technical skill set and also the technical eye, so that we do have a quality knowledge resource and repository already developed. If you look at the reason that we also brought in different universities is of the fact that you need different skill sets and also to look into different sectors. For example, we have some scientists looking at the soil erosion. How would future soil erosion be in terms of scenarios of climate? Similarly, we have some team looking into food productivity, some team looking into how the glacial lakes and glaciers will be impacted by the climate changes. We also have somebody looking into flood hazards, landslide hazard, and also one of the very important part of our study is also looking into how snow and runoff will be impacted. We also have glacier dynamic studies brought into it, and on top of that, Rutgers has been able to bring on board the downscaled product, the downscaled information about how precipitation and temperature would vary in future. So you can see there is a team of scientific people, scientific agencies working and helping with us. So I just wanted to bring in my colleague and friend, Themis, to lead this rest of this presentation. Themis, over to you.
Thank you, Dioraz, and good morning, everyone. I guess I should probably share my screen now. Let me just take a second here. And can you see my slide now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's really a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to present the work that we have been carrying out with Dioraz and AKAH as he introduced. We are talking about a very important topic today. This is bringing together the scientific community, which I represent today with the communities on the ground, local communities that require help in taking informed decisions regarding their future, resilience to climate change and the risks associated with that. And in my view, one of the fundamental elements for building that bridge and building it strong between science and communities is based on the element of open science, and that's why I'm starting with this slide here, where I really want to acknowledge NASA's effort through the High Mountain Asia program, which I'm part of, and many of the contributors that you saw in the previous slide are part of, because we are really promoting and implementing open science through the generation and publicly making available all the data and tools to allow not only us to do research in the area, but everyone else as well. So that means that right now, if you want, you can go to the website that you see there, the HIMA.org, and you can download the latest and greatest that this program has produced, and there will be in the future more data sources becoming available for everyone that is interested in doing similar work. And just to give you a quick idea of the kind of data that one can find there, you can start from high resolution digital elevation models to glacier projections, snow, land surface, and atmosphere variables, water budget estimates, all the way to hazards. So for the rest of my slides, I'm going to give you an idea. Yes?
Please go ahead.
I'm going to give you an idea about some of the results we have produced through the analysis for the region that Duraz presented, and hopefully that will open the discussion later on. So starting by looking at the very basic climate variables and looking at temperature projections, I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with what we see here. We see things that we generally don't like, and here are the two scenarios of 4.5 and 8.5. 4.5 being the one that we now consider probably the one that we should, be aiming and hopefully achieving, while the 8.5 is the so-called worst case scenario. And what we see here as an area average for our study region is that we should expect that by the end of the century, in the, let's say, good scenario, we're going to be dealing with an increase of about 1 degree Celsius, while in the worst case scenario, that increases by an additional 4 degrees Celsius. So we're going to talk about what are the implications of such an increase in the temperature. And we're going to combine that, of course, with the other very important variable, which is precipitation. And the interesting thing here, as you can see at the left in a similar graph as with the temperature shown before, is that you don't see a significant trend in precipitation taken again as the average over the entire study region. So for both scenarios, although you see some increase depending in comparison with the historic on the variability of the future precipitation, when we consider the ensemble median, and the results that you see here come from a 30-member ensemble that was downscaled at 5-kilometer resolution for the area, one would say that, okay, things look pretty stable for precipitation. And indeed, that's what the graph shows. But if we take a closer look and we translate, because we do have the capability to go to a high resolution through the downscaled climate data that we have produced, if we map that across the region and we take a closer look, and that's what we see on the right, then you will see that we have areas where, in fact, there is an increase reported and areas where there is a decrease. That's probably why when we consider the average, things look pretty stable, but it's very important to highlight that having the ability to have granular information that allows us to analyze the projections of these important variables at high resolution, which is relevant for informing local communities, it's paramount. And what you see here on the map on the right, you see the percent change in the highest percentile, the 95th percentile of precipitation, highlighting immediately that the northeast component of the map or the region is going to experience an increase in precipitation. So we have, from one hand, temperature increasing, from the other hand, precipitation remaining stable as an average, or depending on where you are, showing a relative increase or decrease. But if we start looking at other components of the hydrologic elements in the region, and here you see an example of how the dynamics of glacier area are expected to change for the two scenarios, you see a tremendous change at the end of the century with respect to the glacier area. So in this case, there is significant uncertainty, of course, as we all know, associated with the climate projections, but there's no doubt that there is a fast and nonlinear decrease, especially for the worst case scenario that shows that the model median projects a decrease in the glacier area, in this case, as high as 40%. And this is a very alarming result. It's not representative of all the glaciers. It's an example, but there is a general trend that is similar across other glaciers as well. You can also see at the bottom of the slide the person that contributed the data to generate this. I won't be able to demonstrate results from all the contributors, unfortunately, in the interest of time. So I'm just presenting some basic information to open up a discussion, and hopefully when the report is finally published, it can be shared with everyone who is interested. So sticking with temperature, which had the clear signal of increasing in the future, as one would expect when we think about heat waves, situation is becoming significantly worse. And we're looking at the worst case scenario here. I'm just having the map to bring up the importance and highlight why being able to look at maps like that, where we can pinpoint exactly where the vulnerable communities are and analyze at that level of granularity, is where we see, for example, the northwest and south region of our study area being impacted in the future and reaching intensity of heat waves that will be as high as 50 degrees Celsius. And when we looked at the duration that I'm not showing here, the duration in terms of days of the heat waves was multiplied by a factor of 5 or more. So these again are projected hazards that are very important for the livelihood of communities. Another element that we have looked at, and you see here on the screen, is the permafrost. Here you see a comparison between the 4.5 and on the left and the 8.5 scenario on the right, and you can immediately, by comparing the two, recognize the importance of these additional degrees Celsius that we get as a projection for the 8.5 scenario, where a big area of the permafrost has now been removed, and what once was continuous permafrost, and we can still see it on the left, has now turned into an isolated or sporadic. So these results and the fact that we're losing, the water in that state in the region has tremendous implications for the hydrologic cycle and the hydrological applications in the area. So we addressed the precipitation and temperature. We looked at the glacier areas. We looked at the permafrost. But there are also hazards that are triggered by the changes in those important climate factors. And as An example, one of the work that Dr. Stanley from University of Maryland contributed to this study was to look at how the future landslide risk is changing given the different changes in the climate. And you can see, of course, the contrast between the 4.5 and the 8.5 scenario is dramatic. There is an increase in both, but the increase for the 8.5 of landslide risk reaches all the way up to 60 to 80% for the western part, or excuse me, the eastern part of the region. So these are some of the findings that we have developed through the analysis of the state-of-the-art data sets that were produced as part of the High Mountain Asia program of NASA. And by compiling, the different findings and making some concluding remarks to open up the discussion today, I want to highlight that, yes, I'm pretty sure you're not surprised by the fact that the changes in precipitation and temperature are causing significant potential threats in the area. They are actually expected to lead to a cascading and as well as compounding hazards that will significantly impact the vulnerable communities in the region. But open science offers the data and tools to help communities improve resilience to climate change. This is something very important. And what we need to do is that we need to strengthen the interaction between the local stakeholders and the scientific community so that we can make the best out of all these data and tools that we have to offer. But in order to achieve that, I want to circle back to one of the things that Dioras highlighted as well. We need an enabling entity to facilitate science-informed action on the ground. So this is the role that in that particular study, the AKAH and Dioras specifically had, and it made a lot of difference. And I'm very happy I was part of it. And with that, I'm going to conclude with these slides, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Themis. Can I go to my slide? Just one slide to conclude. The final slide, possibly. Yes, one more. Yeah. So to conclude this presentation, I just wanted to share some of the learnings that we had so far. Science, as presented by Themis, is not very simple to be understood by the practitioners, particularly, and the community. So I think the role of enabling agency in between, sitting in between science and the community, is such an important part of the process. And what we have played that role so far, and what we learned so far then is, I think there are already so many studies done by across the globe. There is no need for us to reinvest. If you may have noticed that all of the presentations or the science that Themis presented were contributed by different research agencies sitting across in different universities. So there already has been done so much of work on the science part by different agencies. What we really need is somebody to bring together, collate, and then package in a way that the communities and the development partners can understand and use it. Second finding that I see here is research teams, those that I contacted were so willing to collaborate. They were really forthcoming. There were some people who were helping us with even the designing of our study and also helping with writing the report. There were some who were provided the data and we did the processing. It is very clear from the dialogue that I had with these communities, scientific communities, that research teams often are not connected with the ground. I think we really need to promote that. We really need also to see that the data from the ground is looped into the study so that the scientific community also can benefit from the final granular data that comes from the ground. Two challenges working with this kind of a setting is that different research group, they have a different framework in terms of timeline, in terms of the granularity of data. So bringing data from different teams working with the different assessment framework was a challenge. And we also saw that we also wanted to feed in the institute data from the ground to the study they were doing, access to the data, and also to bring those data into the hands of the scientific community to help them better their research was a big challenge. And finally, again, I would just like to re-emphasize here the role of enabling entity in between science and community is such an important part of the whole process. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much to Deoraj and Timius. I think this was, well, of course, very, very important, even if, of course, we are perfectly aware of the alarming situation in mountain areas. When we see this in front of us is a sad confirmation, and somehow is also an issue that there is this disconnection, and that policymakers are not fully taking this into account. I think this COP in many ways has been a kind of turning point in the sense that for the very first time, I have seen so many mountain events, so many energies, so many countries requesting more attention to what's happening in mountain areas, in mountain ecosystems, and for mountain people. So let's see if we can really continue this together with in a constructive manner. I would like to say that within the Mountain Partnership, we have a Science and Knowledge Advisory Committee, which brings together scientists from different disciplines from all over the world. There is also the Mountain Research Initiative that I'm sure you're familiar with, that is another platform to bring scientists together. What I would like to suggest is that we develop a policy brief on this issue, a short policy brief, like for maximum 2-3 pages, to see how we can be more effective in communicating these important issues to the ground, to the policymakers, to other scientists to continue this process. So thank you very much to the two speakers. This was, I think in a way, a perfect way to initiate the celebration for the International Mountain Day, putting the spotlight on the real challenges. The next on the agenda is Mr. Asif Haider Shah, but I don't think he has joined us, right? Okay, so let's move to the next final speaker. He's Miss Anisa Abibuloeva. It's a real pleasure to give the floor to her. She's a former promo student, which is a training program organized by the Mountain Partnership, jointly with some universities. And she's the youth environmental advocate for Tajikistan. And I have a few questions for her. Perhaps you can come here. So, Anisa, I think it's great that youth are engaging more and more in the climate change process. But what do you think are the key issues in the climate change agenda today for you, from your perspective?
From Tajikistan, the country is 93% covered in mountains. And I studied in the remote mountain area, as we like to call rural of the world. And I'm here as International Youth Climate Delegate of COP28. For youth, it's a huge challenge here, not only for mountainous youth, but overall, it's a meaningful engagement. It's a meaningful engagement in climate agenda, really. Because today we are told to be a future generation, whereas we are already a present generation. For instance, Tajikistan, up to 50% of the total population are youth, people under the age of 35, where the majority and definitely lots of attention should be put on engaging the youth, not only as we like to say, illusion of inclusion as a youth washing, but to be meaningfully engaged in higher levels, in national climate agendas. Like I can give a couple of examples how we as a Central Asian youth actually trying to be meaningfully engaged. For instance, this year we actively participated in compiling a regional statement of use and CSO for the COP28, and we do it annually, then hand over to the government with the hope that it actually will be meaningfully integrated in the national statements too. And another thing that youth is involved as practitioners, as activists, as the researchers too. Like I myself, a project coordinator of Environmental Angel Little Earth, which is also an organization part of Mountain Partnership. And for instance, we work with mountain communities, specifically women and traditional communities, to provide energy efficient and solar technologies in a small scale. And yeah, overall, for youth, now our priority is to be really meaningfully engaged in not only grassroots local actions, but more on national climate agendas, and to be like included as representatives of our country, considering that we are the voice of the half of population.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very needed. And but how do you see that the world leader can create a space for you, or how can you make a space for yourself in this process?
I definitely will think that, like, I will say that it's important to try hard to be engaged by your by by the opportunities that you discover yourself. But I think that there definitely should be a political willingness to include the youth. Because I had an opportunity to talk to youth from all over the world, and everywhere where the youth is actually meaningfully engaged, and I asked how you managed to do that, they said there was a political willingness, there was a recognition of the youth importance. So the first and for the most step is definitely a political willingness to recognize the youth, to accept that it's actually very important to hear the youth and to meaningfully engage them. So definitely it starts from political willingness and governmental recognition of the youth importance. Secondly, like very basic is, for instance, creating a consultancy groups on like consultancy youth groups, for instance, for compiling the national statements, national documents, strategies, and etc. And one of the basic things that really any delegation can do is to include the youth as a parties, as a speakers, give them an opportunity to speak up for the country, to give them a particular track to follow, and to use, because despite being young, so many of us are already young professionals with quite rich experience. So these are something that I would highlight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And going back to the theme of this event, how do you see the youth making the connection with the science? How do you see your role?
Actually, I think like really for me as a climate advocate, science goes along with the action. Like we cannot do really anything without the science. All the national adaptation strategy, especially in terms of climate adaptation, more creating more resilient communities. Like science is like science should stand in the heart of all the strategies. And for us, for as a climate activist, as a climate communicator, we always use scientific background in order to interpret, in order to provide the information to increase the awareness about the alarming issues, because our education systems are outdated, although we are, like, for instance, my community being extremely vulnerable to climate change, so many people are just not aware about this existence, and therefore, like especially civil society, I can say, serve as a bridge between like science community and local population to inform about the alarming issue, and we all definitely use the scientific paper and try to interpret them in a more like in an easy manner. There is definitely still a huge gap, as it was already highlighted, persistent in between the science, between the government, between the CSO. Like we're trying our best in order to decrease it, and in order to use scientific knowledge in a more effective manner. Like, however, I think from my personal experience, I can say that sometimes it just doesn't reach us because it's like it's left on the surface research community. So like research for the researchers, for the scientists, and but I know there are like sometimes there are options like developing the policy brief or the shortened versions of research and etc. However, like I also would highlight, there is like a urgent need to make it available in national languages too, to make it easy to understand for the local communities and for us easier to interpret it, because we always try to interpret it in a local, easily understandable manner. And yeah, and lastly, I think for a scientific community, the easiest way how research and scientific knowledge can be spread is connecting to the grassroots movements, because we do a lot in terms of environmental and overall environmental awareness, and we are those who can really deliver the knowledge to the local population and spread the information.
And if we can count on advocates like you, I think the work is almost done. Because congratulations, you are extremely articulate and you could really present and share your ideas in a perfect manner. So if the youth can be the bridge between these two groups that don't talk too much to each other, that would be really, really important. So thank you for this. It was very, very good to listen to you. And we have a few minutes now in case there are questions from the audience. Like to ask something? Si vous voulez parler en français, pas de problème.
I can start, and I think we have some people online, so if there are any comments, they can also post. But maybe first, Deborah and Demos. So having a study that's looking at long-term risks, 2015, 2080, 2100, how do you balance between the long-term vision and present policy, which is very focused on short-term agendas?
I think this is a very pertinent, a very important question, Malika, but also very difficult too. I guess when you work with science, you sometimes may not have a very immediate vision because of different challenges. Generally, science tend to look further away, but the way that I see here is at the national level, you have this vision which is shorter than the climate science generally look into. What we look into is we have to ensure that the shorter vision is also aligned with what's happening in future. So in any way, the government or any agency formulates a vision, whether yearly or 5 yearly, they have to align their visioning, looking into what will happen in the long term. So science can help you frame that longer term vision, and then at best also guide you in terms of where and how trajectories that you need to take it. Himas, do you have anything to add?
I will follow up to reinforce actually what you said. Short term is is not a good option, and it's up to us to let them know about this and advocate for the long term, because we're dealing with such non-stationarities when it comes to the climate change and all these different impacts that are associated with that we cannot afford to act on a short-term plan.
Thank you. I see another question there. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that when it comes to science, and and people are a little bit scared about, okay, it will be a boring kind of, finding. So for the policymakers in particular, how this great study is going to be translated that one you said like a policy paper or a short policy paper, but then how that is translated into the local communities. So kind of all the institutions, they take it seriously, they make it part of their program to really come out of the smart solution. I think this is a very good question. This distance between the researchers in the ivory tower and the people on the ground, and all the institutions in between has been there since ever. So I really would like to hear from Devraj and Steve, you sit there when they're thinking about this.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really wanted to say here is moment the researchers talk about connecting with the communities, they jump the line and then they directly go into the communities and start talking to them without realizing that it doesn't work that way. You need to have an enabling agency in between who has understanding of both the part. So not just enabling environment, I think we also need to look into an enabling system that you need to create, because science yields so much of knowledge data that has to be understood and used by the users on the community end. So there has to be a system whereby you simplify the intricacies, the difficulties of science and technology, or using the technology of science, and be able for them to access in such a way that they are relatable. Those informations are being served to them in a very relatable way. So I think one thing that we need to do is do some hand holding. You need to work with the developing partners on the ground, communities, do some sort of a hand holding in terms of understanding the science and the data for purpose of using in planning, programming. So handholding has to happen. Second thing is there has to be some systems, if I may call a decision support system, where users can use these data to inform their decision. So it is not a one-time effort. It has to be a continuous effort that you must happen. Thank you.
And the youth are proposing to be the bridge. So this is a great opportunity. But what Anita was saying about translating key documents in local languages, in national languages, I think, in simple languages in general, I think this is also an important step in this process. We used to have in many countries essential services that were exactly created to have that role, to be the bridge between the researcher and the grassroots communities, the panel users. Now, unfortunately, in most countries, these extension services are not really active anymore, or are not so spread as they should be. So we need to find alternatives to ensure that this conversion from the ivory tower, let's say, to the farm, to the real people is taking place. And I think the youth movement can play a very important role in that. But I think also the researchers can start changing their language according to different situations, so that they can really easily communicate with different audiences.
True. I think that's very, very much correct. I also see youth as a generation who are somewhat tech savvy. They know about technology, how to use technology. So they can also bring in that element into the whole discussion, try to translate science through technology to the communities.
Any other question, comment from the audience?
For Efimos, sorry if I mispronounced your name, actually. A bit of a more scientific question. What was the downscaling techniques you used to get the GCM simulations to the high resolution over the Himalayas?
It belongs to the family of the so-called statistical downscaling techniques, and the specific algorithm we used is based on a parametric CDF matching approach, and now is where we start becoming boring to the audience with all these terms that we're throwing around. But yeah, that's the answer to your question.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, yes, please.
I think another question in the face, sometimes very both technical, but also, not necessarily hopeful scientific picture. Maybe it's also a question to Anissa. How do you find a way to, among the youth generation, retain hope in the face of a difficult scientific picture with, some very bleak outlooks sometimes for mountain communities? And how do you encourage that among your peers or other people?
I actually do a lot of work in youth engagement field, and being honest, every year it becomes more challenging. How we keep this hope? We encourage for actions. We say that we are going to be the first one who will deal with the adverse effect of climate change. We are the generation that will feel the worst throughout the existence of our planet, basically. And we encourage for action always, to empowering them, because we need to be resilient. We need to know how we will manage to adapt. And sometimes, yes, it's actually like overall, when you talk about the climate change, even from the perspective of mentality, how people perceive it, it's very often preceded with unacceptance, aggression. Why? Because it's scary. It gives a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, and even from psychological views, it's like whatever gives you uncertainty scares you, and this is often what we also see among the youth. However, the thing is that we are going to be the first generation who's going to go through the consequences. I think keeps us motivated to act, to be present, and to also increase the awareness and make the current generation also to share this responsibility, and to fulfill this intergenerational inequality. So yes, it's very challenging, but we're doing our best.
But you're very serious, very committed, and I think you have found the right way to work on that, because you are alarmed, you're worried, but at the same time you're engaged.
Yeah,
We are so you're not passively taking note. You are very actively contributing to finding viable solutions. So I think yes, there is definitely hope. So if there are no other questions, I really would like to thank you all. I think this was extremely interesting for me. Very, very good to listen to this, and I think very promising also for joint future activities. Congratulations to the speakers. It was a real pleasure. And as Mountain Patch, we are committed to continue working with you, supporting you, making available the network that's, of organizations, institutions that are part of our alliance. There is another event on Mondays today at 2:00 in the food pavilion. It's pavilion number 89. It's the FAO official event for celebrating International Mountain Day. So you're all invited to join. And in general, I would like to repeat that you can count on our support. Thank you.
Thank you.